In 2020, we marked the 50th anniversary of Sun Prairie Civic Theatre. 50 years of inspiring the Sun Prairie community through theatre. That's a lot of years and a lot of shows, over 200 and counting. So to celebrate this golden jubilee, it seems fitting to look back to see how it all began. Community theatre in Sun Prairie actually predates Sun Prairie Civic Theatre. It had its genesis with the JCs, who staged annual variety shows going back to 1962. These efforts eventually grew into full-blown theatrical productions. The last show produced by the JCs was Neil Simon's first play, Come Blow Your Horn, which ran for 5 nights at the high school auditorium in March of 1969. Among those involved in the JC productions, the idea to form a civic theater group in Sun Prairie had been percolating for a couple of years. Finally, in the spring of 1970, a group met to establish bylaws, a constitution, and work through what at the time was called organizational problems. These were apparently resolved, for in late June of 1970, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre was incorporated as a nonprofit with 7 inaugural board members. The newly minted board decided that its first season consists of 2 shows, Absence of a Cello in October and Fiddler on the Roof the following May. They strongly encouraged the public to purchase season tickets, that is, for both Absence and Fiddler. Season tickets were available from any Sun Prairie Civic Theatre member or from Music Alley in downtown Sun Prairie. By mid-September of 1970, Civic Theatre membership was reported to have grown to 105. Auditions for Absence were held and rehearsals began under the direction of Bob Kesnick. Friday, October 9, 1970, was set as opening night, and after the audience had filed in and filled the seats at the high school, the lights went down. When they came back up, the curtain was pulled and Sun Prairie Civic Theatre was born. The first few years of Civic Theatre were years of struggle and never knowing if or when bills would be paid. Frequently, individuals would dig into their own pockets and loan money to the group to pay royalties and other expenses, hoping the show would make enough money so they could be paid. The first show rehearsals were held in Kesnick's limited showrooms in Madison. Subsequently, rehearsals bounced around and included a cast member's basement and an unheated horse barn. Eventually, we rented Moldrum Hardware Store on East Main Street for a year, and then were able to use Forrester Hall. The former Lessner Cabinet Shop building on the corner of Main and Vine Streets was loaned to the group for the purpose of building and painting sets. During these first few years, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre was constantly seeking a permanent place to call home. As luck would have it, in 1972, the city purchased the 120-acre Arthur Bradley Farm on the southern limits of Sun Prairie with the intent of eventually creating a park. Through negotiations with the city, on March 22, 1976, the City Council voted to approve a recommendation from the Park Commission to lease 3.5 acres of land to Sun Prairie Civic Theatre. The lease would extend in perpetuity as long as the property was used for theatrical purposes and improvements were made. The land included 2 barns, 2 garages, 3 silos, and a number of other structures. That summer, volunteers spent hours removing 10 small farm structures and cleaning out the large barn that included floor-to-ceiling hay and 5-foot-high piles of impacted pig manure. Screening was nailed across open windows and the battered barn door replaced by hinged doors that locked. By August of 1976, it had been cleaned up enough to host the first membership meeting. Under the banner that proclaimed, "It's not much, but it's ours," a reported 152 members gathered to elect their board and approve the next season's shows. Guys and Dolls was the first show to rehearse in the new space, which was still quite Spartan. There was no running water, and the nearest bathroom was across the barnyard in the old farmhouse. Temporary lights had been strung that barely lit the space. The roof leaked a bit, and the floor was filled with splinters, which made rehearsal for dancers a little touchy. But the show must go on, and indeed it did, opening at the high school on October 14, 1976. At about the same time, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre expanded its season to include 4 stage productions a year, a format which we more or less continue to use today. In 1991, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre came under pressure from the city to make major improvements to our rehearsal barn. The thought that it was a bit unsightly next to the planned aquatic center. There was even talk of moving the barn. However, we made the decision to borrow approximately $65,000 to renovate and update the barn. First, a new roof was put on. A loft was built on the north end of the barn, under which bathrooms and a kitchen were built. The lower level was enclosed completely, furnaces installed, and the present-day costume shop was moved from the house on the property. Over the years, the inventory in the shop has grown, allowing us to share this resource with community theater groups throughout southern Wisconsin. Since 1991, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre has invested in further renovations and improvements to the rehearsal barn, most notably finally installing a new wood floor over the original barn boards and paving the parking lot. Since that Friday in October of 1970, Sun Prairie Civic Theatre has mounted over 200 productions. Most of these have been familiar stage shows, but from time to time we have ventured into other forms of theater. These include Shakespeare's Reader Theater, live on-air productions of old-time radio shows, and improvisational murder mystery dinner theater. Also of note, in 2013, we staged a world premiere of a locally written musical, Caffeine Dreams. Perhaps our most ambitious foray outside standard community theater productions began in 2015 with the premiere of The Penguin Project. The Penguin Project was founded by Dr. Andrew Morgan and is unique because all of the roles are filled by children with special needs. They are joined on stage by peer mentors who work with them side by side and guide them through 5 months of rehearsals and the final production. We are proud to be one of the earliest of 43 Penguin programs across the country. We are very pleased that since our first year, the participation of artists, mentors, and volunteers in the program has more than doubled. And so we ask everyone to join us in celebrating 50 years of Sun Prairie Civic Theatre. Over those years, we have provided thousands of people the opportunity to share their time and talents with the Sun Prairie Community Theatre. And we take pride in the fact that we continue to educate people of all ages in the experience of live theater, on stage, backstage, and in the audience, hopefully for many years to come.